This is National Educational Television, a program distributed by the Educational Television and Radio Center.
The Religions of Man with Dr. Huston Smith.
The course is over, and now it's time for the final examination. The students who took this course for credit have had their final examination, and now it's time for the rest of us to have ours. For 17 weeks now, we've been together studying the religions of man. Next week, at this time, you'll be doing something different. But before I formally adjourn this course, I want for this final evening to reverse our roles. For the past 17 weeks, you've been asking me questions through the letters you've been writing in and through our talkbacks. Now in this final session, we've come to the point where it's my turn to put the questions to you. And all the questions that I really want to ask tonight boil down to one. The question which really haunts the mind of any teacher in a moment like this is a question which really can't be asked on a regular examination because it can't be graded. But what every teacher really wants to know at a time like this is, have you gotten anything out of this experience? Has it done anything for you? Has it done you any good? Have you come out at some different point from where you entered when you began this study? I said a moment ago that this is a question which can't be graded. Actually, it's also, I suppose, a question which can't be answered with any definiteness and precision. But it may help us towards an answer if we look at some of the things which one might get out of a course on the religions of man. One of the things which you may have gained from this study is information, just straight information concerning the material which we have covered. Here on the desk here we have some of the visual objects which have been a part of this course. Here, for example, is an image of Shiva. Shiva, the four-armed Hindu god, graceful, tirelessly dancing. What comes to your mind when you see this image? I wonder if you think of nature, the Hindu concept of nature as the exuberant outpouring of the divine spirit, a nature without beginning and without end, one without any concept of hell to which the human soul can be consigned to eternal damnation. Or here is an object of an image of one of my favorite characters in all the history of religion, Buddha. I wonder what comes to your mind when you see an image like this, as of this point. I wonder if you think of the prince who had everything that most human beings want. He had pleasures, fame, power was to be his. He was the son of a prince. And yet he renounced all these to plunge for 6 years into the forest in search of enlightenment, and thereafter trudged the dusty roads of India in order to help other people. I wonder if you remember that he boiled his whole message down to a single point. I show you suffering, and I show you the end of suffering. Or here, take this other figure. Here is a figure seated in the familiar lotus position of the yogas, with the legs folded in the lap. I wonder now if yoga has a different meaning for you from what it did when we began this course. I wonder if you no longer think of it purely in terms of the occult, the bizarre, the fantastic, and maybe even the fraudulent. I wonder if you think instead, when you hear the word yoga, of the four basic paths towards God in the Indian conception: the path through work, the path through knowledge, the path through devotion, and the path through psychophysical exercises. Again, if we turn over into our Western tradition and we take a candelabra like this one here, I wonder if this brings to your mind the two great branches of the law. The law as ethics, regulating human relationships. The law which set the prophets aflame with their passion for justice. The ethical arm of the law, then supplemented on the other side by the ritualistic arm, which aims towards the hallowing of all life. Or if you see an object of Christian symbolism, I wonder if your mind might go back now to the founder of this religion, a man who had such a daily beauty in his daily life that those who were closest to him became convinced that he was divine, and a man who went about during his life doing good and in the end died only in the mind of his followers to live thereafter forevermore. Well, these are some of the things which may come to your mind. We could mention lots more. We could mention Confucius, and I wonder if the Code of the Gentleman would occur to you, or Lao Tzu and the possibility of creative quietude as a way of life, or the Koran. Now, when this word comes to you, I wonder if you will, this book comes to your mind. I wonder if you'll no longer think of Islam merely in terms of holy wars or polygamy, but will think of the monotheist and the Prophet Muhammad, who announced a religion which swept Arabia like wildfire, lifting immeasurably the life of the people of his time. Well, this is all a part of one aspect of this course that you may have gained just in the way of straight information. Such facts like these may be a part of you now as a result of your journey, and if so, I shall be very happy. But beyond this, and as important as factual information is in education, there is another dimension, and it's this other aspect of education which lies somehow beyond information. It's this aspect of education and what one might have gotten out of this course to which I would like to turn for our remaining moments together. I know myself, when I think of the courses which have meant most to me, I am sure that they are ones in which I not only gained a great deal in the way of information, but they were courses in which I had the feeling that I came out in some sense a different person than the person that I went in. Not that this realization occurred the day after the course. That's the tricky thing about this business of education. But when months later, perhaps even years later, I took the long look backward, it seemed to me pretty clear that some basic things had been turning over in my makeup during the time that I went through that experience. So it seems to me that education at its best, really, is not so much a matter of information, important as this is, but rather it's a matter of transformation, a transformation in some degree of the human spirit. This at least is the possibility that education always holds before us, and a possibility which I think education should never relinquish as its ideal. Now, to speak of education as transformation is, of course, to ask in our own case whether you're coming out of this experience in any way a different person from the one that went into it. And this, of course, is the most difficult of all questions to answer. We won't expect precision, but what we might do again is to explore some of the ways in which you might be different this evening, at least a little bit different from the person you were 3 months ago. Specifically, let me suggest 3 ways in which possibly you may be somewhat different as a result of this journey which we have taken together. In the first place, you may be changed in your estimate of the place of religion in human life. You may have an added sense of its significance, its importance, and its inescapability. I don't mean that you necessarily have come to the conclusion that religion is always good. I think it would be a mistake to come to this conclusion. Discrimination is a mark of intelligence everywhere in the field of religion as anywhere else. As we said on the opening evening of the course, in this field of religion there is perversion and superstition and corruption aplenty, and we could have spent all our time simply talking about that aspect of religion, for there's been no barbarism in human life which hasn't been committed under the name of religion. And yet, I'm sure that in considering a subject, particularly when the time is limited, we do our best to consider it at its best. And this is what we have tried to do in religion. And when we look at it in its best, I think we have a sense of the importance, the inescapable importance of this material in the human venture. Specifically, there are 3 criticisms of religion which have been abroad in our time, which I hope that as a result of our experience you will now see to be but half-truths. They're half-truths, but I hope you will never mistake them for full truths. The first of these criticisms is that religion is simply primitive science, something which science is going to supersede. Now, it's true. As a part of primitive religion, we get a good deal of primitive science mixed in, the mythical figure of Pan-Ku in creation in Chinese mythology, or the idea of the primordial egg which splits to form heaven and earth in Hindu worldviews. Sure, there's plenty of primitive science mixed in with early religion, but that's not what religion basically is about. And I hope as one thinks back over such a thing, for example, as the yogas, the 4 paths towards God, one has a sense that religion basically is trying to do something very different from what science is trying to do. It's not trying really to explain nature in its detailed workings, nor trying to control nature. Rather, its object is the human spirit and its transformation. And so, I hope you'll never fall victim to the view that religion is simply primitive science. The second misstatement that we have when we take it as a full truth is that religion is a device of escapism. This is the criticism of Freud. Now, it's true, again, millions have used religion as a curtain to draw across aspects of reality which they could not stand. But millions of others have used religion to push back the curtain in order to see more of reality than they otherwise would. For these, to borrow Whitehead's words, the worship of God is not a rule of safety, it is an adventure of the spirit. It's difficult to argue that some of the people we have looked at in this course, Amos, Ahsoka, Confucius, Christ, it's difficult to argue that such men as these were escapists. Religion has fostered in some a sense of sentimentality and it has fostered illusions and wishful thinking, but it has also inspired some of the clearest realism that man has ever been able to attain. A third half-truth that we hear is that religion is an opiate of the people. This is, of course, the standard Marxist criticism. And again, we must recognize that there's some truth in this. Religion has, at times, deadened the pain which arises from economic misery, and it has dulled the urgency to relieve the actual cause of that pain. And yet this is far from the whole picture. And I hope when you come across this criticism, you will think back on Buddha, the man who dared to break caste in his day and take into his ranks those of the lowest caste. I hope you'll think of Gandhi, again, a man who rechristened the untouchables, calling them the Harijan, the children of God, and accepting them right into his innermost circle. I hope you'll remember Mohammed, who was driven out of Mecca because he challenged the injustices of that community and challenged the law of primogeniture and insisted that the inheritance must be divided among all children, women as well as men. Religion has at times been extremely conservative, but at other times it has been genuinely revolutionary. It has been an opiate of the people at times, but it has also been a powerful stimulant at other times. It has been preoccupied at times with raising the church budget. At other times it has been preoccupied with raising the level of the masses. It has made its peace with iniquity, and it has sought to redeem the world. One of the things then, one of the ways in which you may be changed is in your evaluation of the total religious enterprise of man. A second way is that you may have a different attitude towards the religions of other peoples, particularly the religions of peoples of other cultures. I know, as a matter of fact, from a number of the letters which I have received already, that this has done something for you in this dimension. I don't mean necessarily that you agree with all these religions. I think that would be quite impossible. But I think that you may see that you have had these other religions misrepresented in your thinking to a large degree up to this date. And when you hear such bland statements as that Indian religion is world-denying or pessimistic, I hope you'll think of that symbol of Om, of infinite bliss, infinite awareness, an infinite being as the goal of every soul. Whitehead said on one occasion, men require of their fellow men three things: something sufficiently akin to be understood, something sufficiently different to provoke admiration, to provoke attention, and something sufficiently great to inspire admiration. And all three of these things, kinship, difference, and greatness, I think we have been able to find in each of the religions which we have studied. Now, finally, we come to the third and last question. Has this course made any difference to you as a total person? To your estimate of yourself, of your estimate of your neighbor, of your estimate of the world, and the meaning of life as a whole? William James once said, "The only difference that is a difference that makes a difference." I like that very much. And it comes out to this, that the only difference this course will have made in the ultimate sense is if it makes a difference actually in your daily life. Has this course made any difference in the way you live, the way you treat other people, the way you treat yourself, your estimate of the meaning of life? Now, here is a realm in which one must be the reverse of dogmatic. When the mind and the imagination are attempting to make their final casts at what reality is like and what life is all about, when we are falteringly trying to sketch in the unknown, here we must be open, completely open, and the reverse, as I said, of dogmatic. And yet, it seems to me that all these religions point in a certain direction. Not that they're saying exactly the same things in all their detail, not at all. But these things, I would suggest, are part of the general movement or direction in which they lead. Let me just suggest to you 5 of these judgments with which they come out. First, they all seem to me to come out with a conviction that reality is infinitely more than man at present can now comprehend. There's more to it than we can now see. Second, they all seem to come out with a conviction that there is a pattern and significance to life beyond what we can now trace. Third, they seem to come out with a judgment that our total environment in the final analysis is neither hostile nor even neutral to man's basic values, but rather in the end friendly to the human enterprise. And thus they emerge with this basic trust in the universe in which man lives. Fourth, they emerge with a view that sensitivity, beauty, and humor and love are the clearest pointers we now have to the nature of this ultimate reality. And finally, they all seem to me to be saying that periods of doubt and discouragement and struggle and pain in the end are opportunities to the human spirit rather than dangers in any irrevocable sense. Now, whether your thinking will have changed in these directions, I don't know. But here is, again, one of the possibilities in which you may be emerging a different person from what you began the study. Some of my credit students have been calling me since the examination, wanting to know if they passed this course. That's the question you asked me. Did you make it? But the question that I'm really curious about is a different one. It's, did it make you in any sense a different person from what you were? History is full of all kinds of examples of people who set out to get one thing and failed, but picked up something quite different along the way. We've had lots of examples of that right here in this course. Abraham goes out to possess a land, and what he gets in the way of the land is terribly unimpressive. But he picked up a sense of destiny along the way. Moses went out to inherit a land overflowing with milk and honey. He didn't make it, did he? But he got freedom along the way. Man seems forever to be pursuing the horizon, and he never makes the horizon, but sometimes he picks up things much more important along the way. And I would say there's the same possibility here. Whatever objective you set for yourself in this course, whether it was to take it for credit or to keep up with the readings or to make such and such a grade, whatever you set as your standard, whether you made this standard is not so important as whether that made you in some way which is significant. We've called this a final examination, and the phrase has a certain appropriateness as a conclusion to a course, but strictly speaking, of course, it's a misnomer. There is no such thing as a final examination of the religions of man. Every examination of this subject has to be provisional. If you ever reach the point where you can make your final examination of religion, you will be dead, certainly spiritually dead, and maybe more than this. if history ever comes to a point where it can make a final examination of the place of religion in human life, history will be over. For in the end, a finished man, a religion, must mean a finished man in the sense of a man who has no more development ahead of him. And so no study of religion is ever final. It's purely an arch where through there gleams that untraveled world whose margin fades forever and forever as I move, to borrow the words of Tennyson. Now we come to the close, and yet we can ask a close of what? If this has been a show, then it's over, simply over. But if it's been what we've intended, if it's been a course, then it will be really only the beginning. For seeds will have been sown, seeds of curiosity and interest and wonderment, which may germinate slowly, but which nevertheless have a life of their own, which will endure. Each week we've closed our session with some words from one of the spokesmen of the religions we were studying. And now, as we come to close the course as a whole, I think I want to go back to pick up the words of Buddha. There are two reasons for this. For one thing, this is one of the few founders of a religion of whom we have his final discourse to his followers. For a second reason, the content of this particular statement seems particularly appropriate in closing an educational course on religion. So let me read this to you. When the Blessed One had entered upon the rainy season, there fell upon him a dire sickness, and sharp pains came over him even unto death. But then this thought occurred to the Blessed One: it would not be right for me to pass away from life without taking leave of the order. And so the Blessed One, by his strong effort of will, bent the sickness down and spoke to his companions as follows: those who, either now or after I am gone, shall be a lamp unto themselves, relying upon themselves only and not relying upon any external help, but holding fast to the truth as their lamp, and seeking their salvation in the truth alone, shall not look for assistance to anyone besides themselves. It is they who shall reach the very topmost height. But they must be anxious to learn.
Religions of Man is produced by Washington University and KETC Channel 9, the St. Louis Educational Television Station and Production Center.
The preceding program was distributed by the Educational Television and Radio Center. This is National Educational Television.